And friends, at this time we are going to begin the funeral services for Albert Mermelstein. If you have a cell phone or pager, for those of you here, we would ask you to take a moment to turn it off or place it in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Cantor Howard Friedland from the Jewish Reconstructionist Congregation in Evanston.
Good afternoon. We will first tear the Kriya ribbon. It was said that our ancestor Jacob was so overcome with grief when he heard of the supposed death of his son Joseph that he tore his clothing, and we do this as a sign now to show that we're in grief. Susan, I'll ask you to stand up, if you could, and just to tear from the bottom. Just make a little tear in the ribbon. There you go. Thank you. And we say these words. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach Yishem Adonai mevagach. Blessed are you, eternal our God, sovereign of the worlds, who is the righteous judge. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be God's name. So we have come together as family and as community to express our sacred sorrow. We have come together to draw strength from one another and from the ultimate source of all strength. We've come together to affirm comfort and blessing in the face of deepest loss. We have come together to bid farewell to Al Mermelstein. We share a common prayer that the source of healing sustain those of you who grieve. May those wounded with loss be blessed with love and compassion. And we pray that the journey that lies ahead leads from darkness to light, as it is written, "Thus says the source of hope, I will respond to your yearning. When you call out to me in the night, I will answer. I will be with you even in the darkest of places. I will give you strength. I will nourish you. And you shall know protection beneath the shelter of my wings." And we extend condolences to all the family, to Susan and husband John Ashman, and to grandchildren Aaron, Stephen, and Elizabeth Ashman, and Rebecca, and Sarah, Al's brother Moshe, wife Panina Mermelstein, and the late Uri, Sam, Meir, Fegele, Hannah, Herschel, and Zisel. He was the cherished brother-in-law of Sarah Mermelstein, a devoted uncle of many nieces and nephews. And to all of you who are watching from places near and far, my condolences to you. The grief knows really no bounds of relationship. When we've lost someone we love, whether related by blood or not, it hurts to say goodbye, and my condolences to you. We pray for wholeness and compassion in the days to come. And let us say, Amen. The 23rd Psalm. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo achzor, Bihinot dashe yarbitzeni, Al me menuchot, Yenach aleini. Nafshi yeshovev, Yancheni v'magle tzedek, Yancheni v'magle tzedek, Le'ma'an shemo. Kam ki elech begetz al mavet, Lo yirah ki ata imadi, shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yinachamuni. Ahavuch lifanai, Shulchan neged tzogei, Nisham tov Hashem en roshi kosi revayam. Ach tov achesed yedefuni kol yemei chayai. Vishavati bevet Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar. Adonai roi lo echsar. Let's read the translation together, the 23rd Psalm found in your pamphlet. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 121, Esai enai al harim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim ba'aretz. My eyes look into the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from my very source, the fashioner of order and of harmony. Your guardian will catch you when you slip. Your shelter will protect you while you sleep. Your night will not last forever, for your protector will surely bring back the sun in the morning. Your source will watch over you at all times. And as you came into this world, swaddled in loving embrace, so shall you leave. And finally, this reading from Rabbi Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back, we pray, to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until, looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high point along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage. Each of us, during his or her life, writes our own Torah scroll. The Torah is the sacred book of the Jewish people. It is some parts history, some parts myth, some parts legend, but it is our story. And we are told neither to add to it or subtract from it. We read the same words that are handed down for a couple thousand years. And the best in the Torah shows us characters, people who teach us how to live a meritorious life. And there are also those characters who show us how not to live. I think that's the beauty of the Torah. It really is, it's very human, knowing that none of us are perfect, but some live to a higher ideal than others. And so it is that we all write our own Torah scroll during the course of our lives. And Al's Torah was quite amazing. To say he lived an interesting life would be an understatement. He lived at times a harrowing life, but also, especially probably in the latter half of it, a very fulfilling life. So we'll hear from a few people today. I would like to start by reading some words which Al's daughter Susan wrote. My father was 97 years young when he died. I say this because he had the ability to conquer life's journey with compassion, wisdom, perseverance, and most of all, kindness, and devoted love for his family and friends. He was born Eliezer Mermelstein, but was called Laser by his friends that knew him well, and Ludwig in the Hungarian army. At Ellis Island, they asked him what he'd like to be called, and he said Eliezer, which they said was too long. How about Al for short? So it stuck. He came from a loving family of 9 children, his mother Zisel and father Mordechai, both of whom perished in the Holocaust, as well as 1 brother and 3 sisters. 5 brothers survived. 3 went to Israel and 1 to England, and my father came to the United States. He and his brothers remained close and loving through the years. My father loved learning. The latest iPhone, computers, smart TVs, the stock market, all the latest gadgets. We were trying to teach him to say web browser at the TV with his Jewish accent. I guess maybe he said web browser. Hey, it's good enough. He knew what it was. He used to love to go shopping, especially with coupons. He saved hundreds of them. He would go to 3 different stores for items. My father was a teacher of all things. He taught by example. At any age, when he faced a problem, he tried to solve it. There were some things my father would say repeatedly, and I kept them in my heart to this day. First, don't stay mad and say you are sorry. Second, save money, even if it's $5 from your paycheck. And he told me to become a teacher because you'll have job security. He had a strong devotion to family. His love and commitment to my mother Elizabeth, his first love. They were married for 32 years and met at a displaced persons camp after the war. They honeymooned for 5 years in Italy, and I was born there. I admired his love and devotion to Lil, his second wife, who struggled with Alzheimer's for 20 years. My father faithfully loved and took care of her until her death. His last few years at Brookdale before COVID were most enjoyable. He enjoyed dining with his friends, playing cards, sharing Shabbos evenings, concerts, and just looking out for each other. He said, I don't feel alone here. But finally, I think the thing that made him happiest was seeing and being with his grandchildren. Elizabeth, Steve, and Aaron were the light of his life, and he smiled from ear to ear whenever he heard their names or he saw them. He loved the Kupfer family as well, Barbara, Oscar, Rebecca, and Sarah. My father had so many good friends throughout his life. The Schachters, Perlsteins, Turboffs, the Liebs, Liptons, Atlases, Minoffs, Ashmans, too many to mention. It's so very difficult to honor my father in words or capture his true essence because they fall so short in remembering my dad who touched so many of our lives. There are no words, just a big hole in our hearts that can never be replaced. He was loved so dearly and will be missed forever and ever. Susan, thank you very much for those words. And we'll now hear from a friend, Nancy.
Well, actually, you're going to hear from Edith. I'm going to read Edith's words. Edith, I would say, is a very long-term friend, as you will hear. I'm a newer friend. I've only known Elle since I was 5. I do get Medicare, so you can do your own calculations. But I think Edith's words speak not only for her, but would say most of anything that is important to me. And she says, when I think of someone who would embody the definition of living a simple, uncluttered, unpretentious lifestyle, it would be Laser Bacci. But to most of you, the more familiar name would be El Mermelstein. Bacci in Hungarian means uncle, and his Hungarian name was Eliezer. So Laser Bacci is what I was taught to call him. My parents met El in a displaced persons camp in Italy after the war, and they were lifelong friends from then on. Al and his wife Elizabeth were at the camp immigrating to the United States. My family arrived in November of 1949, and Al and his wife Elizabeth and daughter Susie came in 50. Al was actually the first person to see me after I was born, when my dad held me in a window where Al was outside waiting to see me. Al, as so many other immigrants who arrived in the U.S., came penniless, but he was able through his hard work to live a very good life. He lost most of his brothers and sisters in the war, and the remaining brothers all moved to Israel and abroad, which was an option for Al too, but his wife Elizabeth decided to come here. That created distance between he and his siblings, but he did visit them as much as he could. To his dying day, he was involved with the Holocaust Museum. He attended meetings there every week, and he looked forward to functions that they held throughout the year. He loved good food, especially Hungarian good food, and especially the dishes that were prepared by his wife Elizabeth. I'm very glad to say that I had the opportunity to prepare stuffed green peppers and a flourless walnut chocolate tart that he raved about to his friends. It gave me great pleasure to make that cake for him, and it became a tradition that for Father's Day and for his birthday, he'd get one gift and he'd break it into a great smile when it gave him the package, knowing exactly what it contained. We'd have brunches and dinners at my place, and he was always by far my biggest fan. When I was 8 years old, my family and Al's family were at Riverview Amusement Park. We wanted to go on a roller coaster called the Greyhound. The rules were you couldn't go without an adult. So Al volunteered to go with us, not knowing what type of ride he was getting on. He sat between us, holding on to us by the shoulders, and we got off the ride. He was white as a sheet. He wobbled off, and he almost kissed the ground, so happy, because we all survived. He never forgot that experience, and many, many times over the years, we brought it up, laughed, and then we laughed again. Al was a quiet man, a lovable man, a man who loved his family more than life itself. His eyes would light up every time he spoke about his grandchildren, Aaron, Stephen, and Elizabeth. But he might have glowed the most when he talked about his only child, Zusela, who became Susie. Of course, he loved John as much as he would love his own son, but he was so good to him because he was so good to him, to his daughter, and to his grandchildren. He was a good friend, a lover of card games. He loved to eat. He was very involved in political issues. He had a great sense of humor. He'll be remembered by friends and family for many attributes, and for his Mermelstein in his Hungarian accent, but which mostly wasn't because he didn't hear what you said or didn't understand what you said, but I think it was for think time when most people said, We'd laugh, and so would he when Susie would say to him, Dad, you know how to play this game? When he'd utter that, but? We all had the privilege of knowing Al, and will remember how he affected our lives. In closing, I'd like to quote Helen Keller. What we once enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose. For all that we love deeply becomes part of us. And I think that's true. But I'll tell you, whether you're 90 or 95 or 105, it's never enough time. So I hope there'll be a day where we find Al again. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
And next we'll hear from Elizabeth, Al's granddaughter.
lot of similar themes we're gonna hear. There are not enough words for me to describe the way I feel about my grandpa. I tell anyone about him, the first thing I tend to say is that he was my favorite person. Just the other day at work, we had to create a collage of pictures about ourselves. And on mine, I had pictures of sports teams, desserts I like, and a picture of him and I together. I'm going to do an acrostic poem about him, and along the way, some stories that will always be treasured moments. G is for the greatest grandpa on the planet, and for being so generous. Instead of him buying something for himself, he would spend his money on his loved ones. G is also for grooming. My grandpa spent hours of each day in the bathroom. He always shaved and wanted his hair to look perfect. He had his routine that he followed. In addition, he dressed each day and made his bed in a very particular way. R is for reliable and role model. I knew I could always count on him for anything. One time a scam artist called him and said that his granddaughter was taken to Canada and was arrested and needed to be bailed out of jail. My mom went to his apartment and he was putting on his shoes ready to go pay my bail. My mom could not convince him that I was not in Canada. He knew that I wouldn't get in trouble like that, but he always said no matter what I did, he would help me in any way possible. A is for accent. Other people who do not know him may find it difficult to understand him because of his thick Hungarian accent. I'm so glad I saved some videos of him so I can go back to listening to him speak. His hearing was also not the greatest, so when you put the thick accent and the hearing difficulties together, it sometimes caused some issues. Since he always wanted the best technology products on the market, he had a TV remote that you could speak into for commands, and he had the newest iPhone. A lot of times he would try speaking a command to Siri or Xfinity, and it wouldn't exactly pick up his accent. He would smile and laugh, and we would even try to show him by framing his mouth a certain way to ask the correct questions. And when Siri was able to understand him, he would laugh even more. N is for nourishment. My grandpa loved food. My mom always talks about how much he loved my grandmother's food. I never got to try her food because she died before I was born. I love everything my mom makes, but everyone says that my grandmother's food was even better. But even so, whenever my mom made a home-cooked meal, he was so happy. Almost all events were centered around food. He loved Hungarian dishes and going out to eat. But I think what he loved even more was the people he got to be around when he was eating. D is for dad. He's only had one child and he would do anything for my mom. The day before my mom got to see him in the hospital this week, he said, "I can hardly wait for you to come." And when she was leaving on Wednesday, he said, "Already?" The two spent a lot of time together and always brought laughter into their conversations. D is also for deals. If he could save 20 cents for grapes at one store and another 20 cents for bananas at another store 5 miles away, he would. He enjoyed cutting coupons in the Sunday paper. To this day, I never buy anything without looking at multiple stores for the best price, and that is a valuable habit I learned from him. P is for play. My grandpa loved playing cards. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, he taught me to play Kaluki. He and Lil would come over almost every weekend when I was growing up, and we would play cards. They were both card sharks, and they taught me to become one too. His love of cards continued at Brookdale with his daily card sessions. Furthermore, he loved playing poker, and especially the game Kissing Cousins. He always said that it was the best game to play because you can win the most money because of the high and low hand winners. I can see him now, standing up to deal for that game. Some other precious moments is when I would sit next to him at the poker game and explain to him the rules, since there were so many different games, and he acted like he didn't know, and then he would end up winning. A is for assets and apps. My grandpa loved the stock market. He could watch CNBC all day long. He read the paper to learn more about stocks and to know which ones to buy and sell. He loved looking at different websites and apps on his phone to check up on how he was doing. My grandpa loved his iPhone and especially FaceTime. Whenever we talked on the phone, we would use FaceTime to each other. Since March, we haven't had as much time to see each other in person, and I have been spending more time at my parents' house. Anytime I was home and he called, I would rush to my mom's phone and pop in and say hello. Immediately when he got on the phone, a huge smile would come on his face. A is for always being a happy person. Anyone who met him loved him. He was kind, friendly, positive, and just being around him made you feel better. In addition, he always loved to travel. Since I was young, we went every winter break to Florida to visit. I also went on multiple vacations with him. We went to California, Israel, cruises, and many more places with memories that will last forever. Finally, L is for love. The two of us had our own special bond. A few years ago, he started saying something only to me when we ended conversations on the phone. He would say it and then I would say it. He would say, love you, and then I would say, love you. I will always love my grandpa.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And finally, we'll hear from Al's son-in-law, John.
Thank you for coming. Such a man, such a man, such a man was Albert Mermelstein. 17 years ago, when he turned 80, he started to get worried because 3 of his brothers had passed at that age. I felt very bad for him about this, and I thought, what could I do? And I thought, well, I should tell him how I feel. And so I wrote him a letter. And I think he liked that letter. He showed his friends at Brookdale whenever he had opportunity. So I'm going to read the letter. I have a little extra time now that I'm not going on my yearly journey to Southeast Asia. So I just wanted to take this time to tell you how wonderful it has been and how grateful I am for having a father-in-law like you. You are an inspiration on many levels with your commitment and dedication to Lil and the selfish love you have bestowed on all of us. Each and every one of us loves you and needs you immensely. The values that you demonstrate are impeccable. And you've been a model for me, my sons, and my daughter. I always tell my friends, you can't imagine that I've never had an argument with my father-in-law in over 30 years. Never a disagreement. But the true reason for that was him. Somehow, you have the wisdom and great character to get your views across in a mild, friendly manner. You always have a courageous smile and a happy disposition that lightens up the room. I don't know how you do it. Your guidance, strength, generosity, wisdom, and love have been immensely important over the years. In fact, just knowing that you are on Kedzie Avenue is immensely important to me, Susan, Aaron, Stephen, and Elizabeth. I want you to know how I feel. You know that you can count on me if you ever need anything, as you have been here for me when I was at my lowest point. You're absolutely remarkable in every way. How did I ever get so lucky to have you and Susan in my life? Such a man, such a man, such a man was Albert Mermelstein.
Thank you very much, John. Susan and Elizabeth, thank you for your words. And I know that Susan said it would be too much for her to read her words herself. And I know Elizabeth and John, it's very difficult to read those words, but it is certainly a testament of the love you had for Al and the love he had for you. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. I didn't know Al personally. It's the interesting part of this work is that I talk to someone for some time over the phone. In person these days we do it over the phone. We do it in Zoom, and you learn about someone's life, and it touches you. I always think that we should leave this service changed in some way by knowing about the person's life. In this case, about knowing about Al's life, and what touched me was that when Susan and I were talking yesterday and hearing from Elizabeth and John and Nancy, I'm so sorry and thank you so much. And what you said is so true, reading Edith's words, but what you said is true, that even at 97, a very, very long life to be sure, it's still always too soon, but that Al will always be in our hearts, right? The ones we love will always be with us when we have something we want to share. When we have advice maybe we need, we can hear their voice, right? It hurts right now, and that hurt will last for some time, but when that starts to heal, he'll be with you in a real way, not physically. You can't touch him, you can't kiss him, and that's the tragedy, but his advice, his wisdom, his love will always be with you. Al was a carpenter. He was a cabinet maker, worked for Hammond organ. A skill, no doubt, that held him in good stead before he came to the United States. What was mentioned that he had a smile on his face all the time, that he loved people. He loved just hanging out with his friends. That's what he loved most of all. Susan told me that when he was in the hospital and nurses would come to visit him, they'd double check him and look at their record again, and they go outside. They said, there's supposed to be a 97-year-old man in here. You look like you're in your 60s. And no doubt he loved that kind of compliment. But having loved the way he did, I'll just say this. Our lives right now are turned upside down because of COVID-19. It's something few of us, none of us really have experienced before. None of us are living now. But can you imagine life being turned upside down, 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times more, how Al's life was turned upside down? He was, as it was said, he followed the market. He was very wise. He was very smart, and he followed gadgets. He probably, if things had been different, he probably would have been a successful professional of some sort. But the Nazis had other plans. And can you imagine having more than half your family wiped out, yourself being interred in a camp, coming to a different country with nothing, and then making a life for yourself and making a life for your family? It seems to me, and I told Susan, I told this to you yesterday, if Al had been bitter his entire 97 years, no one could have blamed him for what he went through. But it is a testament to his fortitude and his embrace of life that he chose life. We read Parshat Re'eh just a couple of weeks ago in the Torah, and we're told that we have a choice. Put before you a blessing or a curse. Choose life that you may live. And Al chose life, and he chose to embrace that part of his life that was good. And no doubt he had things buried in his mind that maybe he wouldn't have revealed, but he lived a great life and loved and had friends and was loved by them. And that's the greatest legacy anyone can leave. So when I leave here today, maybe I'll start collecting some coupons. And maybe I'll park 5 miles away to avoid putting money in a meter so I can save it and invest in the stock market. But those things that he taught you will live on. Zichrono livrecha, may Al's memory forever be a blessing. And I'll ask you, as you're able, to please rise for the memorial prayer. If you're not, stay seated. Prayers are heard just as easily seated as standing. El Malerachamim Shochen Bamramim Hametzei Menachanachanat Achat Kanfech Hashchena B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Techorim Kezohar Rakiya Mazhirim Et Nishmat Eliezer ben Mordechai V'Zisel שהלך לעולמו. ענה בעל הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. God, filled with compassion, whose loving presence ever surrounds us, bring final rest to the soul of Al Mermelstein, who has returned to his source. May the memory of his life shine forth like the brilliance of the skies above as it brightens our own lives even now. May you, who are the source of all compassion, shelter him beneath the protection of your wings and bind his soul among the living, that he may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. And we'll now recite the Mourner's Kaddish, which is found in your pamphlets at the back page. The Kaddish means sanctification. It does not mention death at all. It mentions words like shalom, peace, and chayim, life. And one of the names actually for this place, for a cemetery in Hebrew, is the Beit Chayim, is the house of life. Where we come, and as it is a beautiful and peaceful day, to remember those lives that touched our own. And as I said before, once the wound starts to heal and you can remember those good parts, may those good memories inspire you and give you strength. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemeh rabba, v'alma divrach yutei v'emlich malchutei. וחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. May the one who makes peace make peace for us and for all Israel and for all who dwell on earth, and we say amen. I'll now put in with Al earth from the land of Israel. It's traditional. to put three either handfuls or cupfuls. There are some Dixie cups here you can use to use this earth, or if you like to put earth from the ground in. The number 3 is a number of intention. It shows there was no mistake, and this is the highest mitzvah you can really do for someone, to do something for them which goes unpaid, doing it from your heart. And so I'll ask the family first to come forward and either use the cup or their gloves if you'd like to use for the earth, and 3 shovelfuls. You can put it right there. Anyone else would like to come forward to this space together? And we say these words to all who are gathered here. We said these words to everyone who is gathered. May God console you with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. And now we go forth in peace to life. That concludes this part of the service. The gentleman from the cemetery will continue with the covering of the grave now.